Yeah, this is the fourth story to go with episode 4. The Mundane and the Mage is what it's called. It's the urban fantasy where they're stranded in a magic school. The two main characters, two ditzy main characters. This one, it takes place in Japan. I used real places. There's footnotes if you go to the Substack. There's little fun facts about the places that I used, but I used to live around there, so that's why I used them. Anyway, Miss Furukawa, might I suggest completing this audit on a more pleasant day? The driver, Takara, carefully navigated this wet, winding mountain road along the Suruga Bay coast. He left out the fact that this audit was supposed to have been done a month ago, when the only hazard on the road would have been the lovely cherry blossoms fluttering in the wind, and the magic of the Chubu region would have been at its strongest. It's just a drizzle. A little rain never hurt anyone. Ayami's words were nearly drowned out by the thunderclap overhead and pelting sheets of water on the car window. Takara's rage-fueled grip on the steering wheel limited his ability to control the car as it hydroplaned and swerved into the side of the mountain. Meanwhile, out in the tumultuous waves of the bay, a lone smuggler's ship struggled to stay afloat. The sails were torn apart by the wind, and the motor wasn't strong enough to fight the sea. "I thought I'd be fine on my own. It's just rain," Kiyomi said into the radio. Despite the situation, her fear never crept into her voice, a trait her boss both loved and hated. Just rain? Kazuma, the leader of the crew and a sailor all his life, did not approve of Kiyomi's solo mission, nor did he know she left alone. "This is a typhoon, you idiot." The rest of the boss's rant turned to static as a massive wave struck the side of the ship and killed the connection. Ayami, still a bit dazed from the impact, stood next to the wrecked car while Takara muttered a spell to heal their minor wounds. Sensing an imminent lecture, Ayami busied herself, pretending to inspect the damage to the car. Aw, the charm fell off. Ayami picked through the remains of the grill of the car and frowned as she pulled the frayed string from its grid. The warding charm that she tied to the car had fallen off. "Miss Furukawa, where did you attach the charm?" Takara's exasperated sigh said he already knew the answer. "To this little grid in the front." "On the outside?" "Well, the rain is on the outside, isn't it?" "Miss Furukawa, you..." The driver shook his head and pulled out his phone, giving up on trying to lecture the girl he'd been trying to keep safe for 2 decades. "Sit in the car while I call HQ." As Takara walked away, Ayami wandered across the street, taken in the chaotic scenery of the storm. Just to her left, a narrow path led down to the seaside where she could better see the crashing waves without a pesky cliffside blocking her view. As wave after wave hit the side of Kiyomi's boat and piece after piece broke off, she began to see the flaw in her plan. A full crew, or even one other person, could have weathered the storm and made it to shore safely. Kiyomi alone, however, couldn't keep everything tied down and the sails furled, while also steering the ship. A particularly strong wave hit the boat while Kiyomi had only one hand on the wheel and the other trying to grasp the ropes whipping around in the wind. The force sent her sliding across the deck and nearly overboard. The rope she managed to grab in the last moment helped her pull herself to her feet. In the moment she heaved her sigh of relief, the current pulled the boat into a jagged patch of rocks just offshore. The sound of grinding metal and stone harmonized with the rolling thunder as the storm composed Kiyomi's nightmare. A narrow, muddy path led Ayami down to the lines of Dolosi, valiantly breaking the waves before they washed her out to sea. Rain battered her umbrella, and the magic keeping the wind from tearing it apart was waning. "I probably could have gotten a better view from walking down the road up there," she thought to herself, staring up at the cliff that had been blocking her view. It still blocked her view. With a sigh, she turned back the way she came. The slippery path swept her foot from under her after just a few steps, and the wind stole her umbrella. Chanting a quiet spell, she sent out a tendril of light to reel it back in. On the horizon, in the direction the wind was taking her umbrella, a small ship battled the waves, clearly about to capsize. Ayami abandoned the umbrella and raced to the edge of the water. She couldn't see the ship's crew and feared they had already been flung overboard. With the strength of Sakya Hime at her back, Ayami chanted her spell, putting all her power into the rope she extended out to the ship. Kiyomi's ship capsized and she plunged into the cold waters of the bay. The waves rolled over her face whenever she breached the surface, pushing her back down. The current pulled her towards the sharp rocks that destroyed her boat. Just before losing consciousness, a rope similar to the shimenawa that enshrine kami in trees and stone swam toward her. As the world faded to black, she accepted that the gods had come to take her. Takara pulled Ayami away mid-spell. She felt her rope take hold of at least one person from the ship and drag them ashore as Ayami was forced back to the car. Miss Furukawa, please do not wander off like that again. It will take some time for help to arrive in this weather. Might I suggest you take shelter in the old academy? Right. But a shipwreck just off the coast there. I was trying to pull one of the sailors ashore. I will make a call to the Mundane emergency services to have someone help them. Ayami nodded and strode along the road with her new umbrella. Not that it made much difference to her already soaked-through peacoat and skirt. The mundane world would be best able to help with mundane problems, she told herself. The Urudai Academy was nestled near the base of Mount Kuno, out of sight of the main roads. In the past, nearly 200 years ago, it was the Chubu region's most elite school where students learned about their patron, Sakya Hime, and how to invoke her magic. Now it lay abandoned and forgotten. For centuries, the 8 elite magic families, each in control of one region of Japan, maintained these schools. However, in modern times, fewer mages were willing to travel to remote mountain schools. Ayami wanted to change this. She wished she could have attended a rural, secluded school rather than the highly political city schools where her status as a member of Chubu's elite family was all anyone cared about. Ayami trudged up the short path to the school, squinting through the rain at the small ramshackle building in the distance. Kiyomi coughed and sputtered, seawater burning her throat as she fought to breathe. Somehow, she was alive and on land. She pulled herself to her feet and staggered over to the staircase built for fishermen to fish off the coast, though none were out in the storm. The railing steadied her enough to make it up to the road where, of course, there were no cars either. She couldn't see the nearby shops or the car accident down the road through the rain, but she did see a narrow path that led up to the mountain. Hoping to find a house or a tea shop with a phone, she jogged up the path. To her dismay, the only building that sat at the end of this path was a broken-down traditional home that looked like it had been neglected for nearly 200 years. At least I can get out of the rain, I guess, she thought as she approached the home. Unbeknownst to each other, both Kiyomi and Ayami entered the old school simultaneously. The magic disguising the academy from the eyes of the mundane humans triggered at the same time as the magic that would reveal the true form of the academy to mages. As a result, the doors and windows all slammed shut, sealing the intruders inside, and the building transformed into a grotesque mixture of rotting, abandoned building and elegant, somewhat neglected shrine. Ayami tutted to herself, grumbling about disrespect to history and vowing to stabilize the magic so the school could be returned to its former glory. Kiyomi instinctively and unwillingly let out a shriek as doors shut on their own and walls morphed before her eyes. Hearing a scream from deeper in the school, Ayami roused from her internal complaints and moved toward the noise. The doors and windows had all sealed, sending Kiyomi into further panic. She was certain she was dead and had found her way to hell. Praying she could find an unsealed door or window, she tried each one that she could reach. Most didn't open, but one door did, and led her to another, identical room. Another door opened, and a force pulled her into a dark room full of moving shadows. The unstable magic of the school caused some doorways to lead nowhere and others to lead backwards. After passing through 3 or 4 doors and making no progress, Ayami thought to cast a counterspell on the doors before entering. Conjured blobs of shadows skulked around this room, the magic too chaotic to control or give form to them. A tall, broad-shouldered person was pressed into one corner, as far away from the blobs as possible. "Are you all right?" Ayami called, dispersing the shadows. Once they were gone, the room filled with light from the lamps along the walls. "Who? What?" Kiyomi blinked at the newcomer. She stood up straight and stopped her legs from trembling. Her cute pumpkin shorts and pink bowed blouse were disheveled and dirty, and the soaked fabric of her sleeves revealed her heavily tattooed arms. "This must all be very confusing. Were you the one that screamed earlier? I am Ayami Furukawa." She held out her hand to the other woman with a bright smile on her lips. "That wasn't me," Kiyomi lied, eyeing Ayami warily. "Oh, then we should hurry and find them. The magic here isn't stable." "Magic? What the hell is this? Am I dead?" I hope not. That would make me dead too. Ayami took a step toward Kiyomi, only for the mundane woman to dash past her and through another door. As soon as she stepped through the doorway, vines snared her arms and legs, pulling her up and dangling her from the ceiling. See, the school thinks we're intruders, Ayami explained. Don't worry, I'll get you down. School? This is a school? Kiyomi cried, frantically trying to keep her shirt from revealing more of her less feminine qualities as the vines held her upside down. Yes, a rather famous one. Well, famous to us. You wouldn't know about it. Ayami pressed charms to the base of the vines as she talked and activated her magic to disable them. She successfully crippled 2 of the vines, freeing one of Kiyomi's arms and one of her legs. This isn't helping. Just cut them or something. Another burst of concentration sent Ayami's magic into one more vine, leaving Kiyomi dangling by one leg. Before Kiyomi could voice more complaints, the final vine released her and sent her plummeting to the ground. Luckily, Ayami standing at the base of the vines broke her fall. As the pair groaned in pain in a heap on the floor, magic pulsed through the school and the walls and doors all morphed again. This is insanity. I need to get out of here, Kiyomi grumbled, walking from door to door to find one that opened. The magic is unstable here, so be careful. Ayami pulled Kiyomi out of the way as a flurry of arrows shot through one of the doors. That's the insanity. Magic isn't real. It is. We just keep it hidden from the rest of the world. For centuries, 8 elite families and their disciples have worked with their patron Kami to... So you're a priestess? No, well, kind of. Not all mages are priestesses or priests, but most priestesses and priests are mages. How do we get out of here, then? We can't leave until I restabilize the shrine at the center of the school. Just follow me. Ayami strolled across the room, not checking to see if Kiyomi followed. She chanted brief stabilization spells as she threw open doors and windows, safely navigating the maze of halls and staircases. When Kiyomi tried to open a door or window, all she would find is traps. She nearly plummeted down a sheer drop on the other side of one door and slammed another door on a suit of animated samurai armor. After over an hour of wandering, Ayami began to lose hope in her ability to navigate. Seeing the mage's shoulders droop, Kiyomi pulled out her waterlogged phone, the screen only flickering before fading to black. Do you have a phone, or do you use owls or something? Kiyomi asked. Who would do that in this day and age? Of course I have a phone. Why? Even if we call someone, they won't be able to get in. No, but we can take pictures of the halls we've already passed and try to make a map or something. Kiyomi's idea was backed solely on her knowledge of dungeon crawler video games, but she couldn't stand feeling useless. Kiyomi, that's perfect! Ayami pulled out her phone and handed it to the other woman. You handle that. Then in a few rooms, we'll sit down and try and figure out the path so far. The pair continued, confident in their plan, for another hour before pausing. They found empty kitchens, classrooms, and lounges, but not the path to the school's center. Huddled together away from the changing walls and doors, they swiped through the photos on Ayami's phone. Their hearts sank with each swipe. All the paths look the same, Kiyomi noted. And they keep changing, Ayami added. They let out a synchronized sigh and collapsed to the floor. They entered the school in the late afternoon. It was now well past dark. I guess we can continue in the morning, Ayami said, putting her phone away. I'm sure there's a room with beds somewhere here. I'm not sleeping here. I thought you could get us out. Well, it's late, and it's been raining all day. There's no way you'll make it down the mountain safely now. Kiyomi couldn't argue that point and folded her arms across her chest, glaring at the mage. Begrudgingly, she followed Ayami through more identical paths until they found what looked like a private office or bedroom. A small low table and dresser sat on one end of the room, and a similar but slightly larger table sat in the center of the room. A pile of cushions were stacked in one corner, and one wall, static as the other 3 walls morphed periodically, had a sliding door that led to a closet. I bet there are some futons and blankets in there that we can lay on. Ayami ignored Kiyomi's grimace and wary glances at the transforming halls behind her. As expected, a pile of bedding was on a shelf in the closet. However, once laid out on the floor, the pair discovered there was only one set. Whoever lived here didn't have a backup or anything? Kiyomi searched every shelf, particularly the high ones Ayami couldn't reach, to no avail. You can have it. I'll be fine with just these cushions. The mage lined up all the cushions next to the futon and lay down. They were lumpy and slid apart whenever she moved. No, I'll just stay on the floor. You take it. I'm used to rough nights. Kiyomi refused to elaborate past that, not willing to speak on the criminals she'd associated with through her life and the hardship that came with it. Let's just share. You'll catch a cold with no blanket. Ayami settled in on one edge of the narrow futon and patted the space next to her. It'll be easier for me to make a protective barrier for closer to. You don't want to lay next to me, Kiyomi muttered. Why? Because of the tattoos? You don't seem like a pervert that dresses like a woman to sneak peeks in the hot springs or anything. I'm not. Kiyomi shot up, indignation burning in her eyes. She wished that same conviction filled her voice. I'm a woman. Then there's nothing wrong with us sharing the futon, right? Kiyomi hesitantly settled next to Ayami. The tattoos don't bother you either? I'm associated with some dangerous people. It's alright. We have spells to keep the magic world and mundane world separate. You won't remember any of this. A strange pang of sadness rippled through Ayami's heart as she said the words. Did she have to make Kiyomi forget her? The same feeling echoed in Kiyomi's mind. As traumatizing as this adventure had been, she didn't want to forget it or Ayami. The deafening sound of a gong woke the two women with a start. Ayami's arm was on top of Kiyomi's chest as the mage slept like a starfish, so when Kiyomi shot up, she got an elbow to her nose. She dropped back down to the futon, holding her face only to bump heads with Ayami as she sat up to apologize. The gong sounded 5 more times before they safely got out of bed. Morning sunlight flooded the room as it shined in through the window. All four walls of the room seemed to have steadied themselves, and the hall no longer morphed and shifted as they walked. In fact, the school was no longer a maze at all. The women easily found their way to the entry hall where Takeda and some others who worked for the Furukawa family waited. Miss Furukawa, I see you had some trouble with the stabilization, her attendant commented as his eyes swept over the disheveled pair before him. His eyes lingered on the mundane friend his charge seemed to have made. At the opposite end of the entry hall, a small shrine was nestled into the wall with a shimmering cherry blossom branch floating in front of it. Without proper maintenance, the branch would wither and cause the building that housed it to destabilize, as this school did. Takeda had restored the magic to the branch and thus stabilized the school for now. Oh, thank you, Takeda. We couldn't find our way last night, so... Yes, it was rather difficult, but we are always able to navigate towards centers of Sakuya-hime's power. A ball of pink light formed in his hand and stretched out to point in the direction of the shrine like a compass. Ayami's mouth flopped open and closed like a fish out of water. She'd forgotten about that method. You could have done that this whole time? Kiyomi cried, staring at the speechless mage. Ayami let out an awkward giggle to break some of the tension. Ah, well, what's done is done, and we can return home now. It looks like the weather cleared up as well. As they descended the mountain, Ayami and Kiyomi dragged behind the others. At the base, Kiyomi's memories would be taken. You know, if you run away, I can pretend I couldn't chase you, Ayami whispered. She held Kiyomi's hand, and the smuggler's palm felt warmer than it should. When they parted, a phone number glowed on Kiyomi's skin. The pair exchanged a smile, and Kiyomi darted into the woods. To sell her escape, Ayami let out a shriek and fell onto her bottom. By the time her attendants realized what happened, Kiyomi had made it back to the main road. A small boba tea shop allowed Kiyomi to use their phone so that she can call her boss. He yelled and lectured, but ultimately would forgive her. Despite the many choices she made that he would never understand, he never had the heart to remove her from the crew. Within an hour, a car arrived to pick her up. The end. And then here, the facts. So Tsurugabe is in Shizuoka Prefecture. Shizuoka Prefecture is where Mount Fuji is, so Sakuya-hime is the goddess for Mount Fuji. Urudai I made up. Mount Kuno, or Kunozan, is also in Shizuoka Prefecture. That's where they are. And the tattoos, if you didn't know, in Japan is associated with the Yakuza, so people are usually uneasy around tattoos. And FYI, if you have tattoos, a lot of spas and hot springs won't let you in. It's changing these days, but some still hold the old ways. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Bye.